I'm filing for divorce. I discovered someone younger there. My name's David. I'm 47. Been a mechanical engineer for Cornerstone Industries for the past 12 years. That message arrived through WhatsApp while I was examining blueprint specifications for a new manufacturing facility in Orlando. My wife Isabella had been visiting her family in Sao Paulo for the 4th time this year. She included a photo, her arm around some guy who looked like he could be my nephew. Both of them smiling at the camera like they just accomplished something. He makes me feel like royalty, unlike you. The following message said, "We've already settled into your house. It's simpler this way." I placed the phone down on my drafting table. The blueprints became blurry for a moment. 14 years of marriage and she informs me through a text message. No phone call, no discussion, just a WhatsApp notification between coffee and my afternoon project meeting. I picked up the phone and typed back congratulations. Then I locked the screen and returned to work. The thing is, I'd been sensing something wrong for months. Small things that didn't make sense. Isabella had always been close to her family in Brazil, but these visits were becoming longer, more regular. She'd leave for 2 weeks and extend it to a month. "Family requires me," she'd say when I asked about returning home. But it wasn't just the trips. Our joint checking account had been showing withdrawals I didn't recognize. When I questioned them, she'd wave her hand and mention something about family crises or shopping for her mother. I trusted her. Maybe I shouldn't have, but I did. Last month, she missed our wedding anniversary. Said she forgot because she was handling her sick uncle. The uncle who, according to her brother's Facebook posts, had been perfectly fine and posting vacation photos from Recife. I'd started keeping receipts, not because I was planning anything, but because something in my gut told me to pay attention. Bank statements, credit card bills, even screenshots of her social media posts that didn't align with what she was telling me. When you've been an engineer for as long as I have, you learn to trust patterns. And the pattern here was obvious. My wife was lying to me. I just didn't know how extensively until that WhatsApp message. The photo troubled me more than the words. Not because of jealousy, but because of the timing. She looked content. Really content. Like she'd been planning this moment for a while. Like the decision had been made long before she bothered to inform me about it. I finished my work that day, drove home to our empty house in Pinecrest, and sat in my truck for 10 minutes before going inside. Something told me this was just the beginning. Isabella and I met at a company barbecue back in 2011. She was visiting Miami with her cousin, fresh off the plane from Brazil with basic English and a smile that could stop traffic. I was the quiet guy who fixed things and kept his head down. She was everything I wasn't. Outgoing, spontaneous, full of energy. We got married a year later. Small ceremony, just her cousin and a few of my co-workers. She moved into my house, the one I'd purchased 3 years earlier with money I'd saved from working overtime at the refinery. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Or so I thought. The first few years were good. She learned English. I learned some Portuguese. She'd cook these incredible Brazilian dishes, and I'd come home from work to the smell of garlic and fresh herbs. We talked about children, about her maybe starting a business, about me getting promoted to senior engineer, but Isabella never really adapted to Miami life. She missed her family, missed the culture, missed the way things worked back home. I understood that. What I didn't understand was why the visits home kept getting longer and more costly. My mother needs surgery, she'd say, and I'd wire $2,000 to her account in Sao Paulo. My brother lost his job and another $1,500 would disappear. The family business is struggling and suddenly our savings account was lighter by $5,000. I never questioned it. She was my wife. If her family needed help, we helped. That's what married people do. But looking back, there were signs I should have noticed. Phone calls that ended when I walked into the room. Text messages she'd delete immediately after reading. New clothes that appeared in her closet with tags from stores I'd never heard of. The biggest red flag was her attitude toward our finances. She'd always been vague about money, But lately she'd started asking about my retirement account, about the house deed, about my life insurance policy, questions disguised as casual conversation, but specific enough to make me uncomfortable. "Just curious," she'd say when I asked why she wanted to know. "I want to understand our future better." 3 months ago, she'd asked me to add her name to the house title. Said it would make her feel more secure, more like this was really her home, too. I told her I'd think about it. That was apparently the wrong answer. The trips to Brazil became more frequent after that. The excuses became weaker, and the money transfers became larger. Last week, I'd checked our joint account and found a withdrawal for $3,000 I didn't remember authorizing. When I called the bank, they said it was an international wire transfer initiated online using both our login credentials. I confronted Isabella about it over dinner. She laughed it off, said she'd needed money for an emergency, and hadn't wanted to bother me at work. That's when I knew for certain. My marriage was over. I just didn't know she'd already decided the same thing. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee and my laptop, reading through 3 years of bank statements, transaction by transaction, transfer by transfer. The pattern was clear once I started looking for it. Every trip to Brazil coincided with large withdrawals. Every family emergency happened to cost exactly the amount we had available in our joint savings. Every time I got a bonus or overtime pay, money disappeared within a week. But the real punch to the gut came when I logged into our credit card account. There were charges I'd never seen before. Hotel rooms in Sao Paulo, restaurants, shopping, and not just for one person. The bills clearly showed expenses for 2 people. She'd been taking someone else on dates with my credit card. I called the credit card company at 6 a.m. The customer service representative was helpful but professional. Yes, the charges were legitimate. Yes, they were authorized using the correct security codes. Yes, they'd been going on for months. "Is there anything else I can help you with today, Mr. Thompson?" I hung up and stared at the wall. The worst part wasn't the money. It was the timing. According to the statements, the romantic dinners and hotel stays had started 8 months ago, right around the time we'd been talking about renewing our vows for our 15th anniversary. While I was planning a surprise trip to celebrate our marriage, she was planning to end it. I picked up my phone to call her. Then I set it back down. What was the point? She'd already made her choice. She'd moved another man into my house. She was spending my money on him. She'd reduced 14 years of marriage to a WhatsApp message. But something else was starting to surface under the hurt and anger. Something colder and more calculating. If Isabella thought she could walk away with half of everything I'd worked for while leaving me with debt and humiliation, she was about to learn something about the man she'd married. I'd spent my entire career solving problems, finding weaknesses in systems, identifying points of failure before they became catastrophic. My marriage had failed, but that didn't mean I had to lose everything in the wreckage. I opened a new browser window and searched for the best divorce attorney in Miami. Then I searched for a private investigator. Then I started printing out bank statements, credit card bills, and every piece of documentation I could find. If Isabella wanted a divorce, she could have one, but she was going to get it on my terms. I made my first phone call at 8 a.m. sharp. The lawyer's name was Maria Rodriguez, and she specialized in complex divorce cases involving financial misconduct. "How much evidence do you have?" she asked after I explained the situation. "Enough," I said. "And I'm just getting started." Maria Rodriguez had been practicing family law for 20 years. Her office in downtown Miami was lined with legal books and awards, but what impressed me most was how quickly she understood what I was dealing with. "International divorce cases involving hidden assets are complicated," she said, reviewing the bank statements I'd brought. "But you've got solid documentation here. The question is, how much more is there?" I told her about the house, about Isabella's attempts to get her name added to the deed, about the mysterious man now living in my home. "We need to move quickly," Maria said. "If she's already cohabitating with someone else while you're still married, that gives us leverage. But first, we need to secure your assets before she tries to drain everything." That afternoon, I drove to our bank and opened an individual checking account. I transferred my next paycheck there instead of our joint account. Small step, but it felt like taking control back. The bigger step came 2 days later when I met with a financial advisor Maria had recommended. His name was Michael Chen, and he specialized in asset protection. "Your wife's been clever," he said, reviewing my financial portfolio. "She's been positioning herself to claim half of everything while contributing nothing. But there are ways to protect what you've earned." Michael explained how I could transfer ownership of my retirement accounts and personal assets into a revocable trust with me as the sole beneficiary. It was completely legal as long as it was done before formal divorce proceedings began. "The house is trickier," he said. "Since it's marital property, she has a claim to it, but if you can prove she's abandoned it to live with someone else, that changes things." I called our mortgage company that afternoon, explained that I wanted to refinance to get a better interest rate. They sent me paperwork requiring both signatures. I mailed it to Isabella in Brazil with a note asking her to sign and return it. She never responded. 3 weeks later, the mortgage company called to say the refinancing deadline had passed. Since only one spouse had signed, they'd have to restart the process with just my name on the loan. That's when I made my move. I contacted a real estate attorney and began the process of transferring the house deed into my name alone. Since Isabella had failed to respond to the refinancing paperwork and had abandoned the property, I had grounds to claim sole ownership. It took 6 weeks to complete. 6 weeks during which Isabella sent me photos from Brazil bragging about her new relationship. Photos of her and this kid at restaurants I'd never been able to afford. Pictures of them on vacation in places I'd always wanted to visit. She was living like a queen on my money while making sure I knew about it. But while she was posting pictures on social media, I was systematically documenting every expense, every transfer, every piece of evidence that would prove financial misconduct in court. The private investigator Maria had recommended was worth every penny. His name was Roberto Silva, a former police detective who specialized in international investigations. "Your wife's boyfriend isn't just young," he told me during our first meeting. "He's broke. No job, no assets, no prospects. She's been supporting him entirely with money from your accounts." Roberto had traced the money transfers. Every wire to Brazil had gone straight to accounts linked to this kid. Rent payments, car payments, shopping sprees. Isabella had essentially been paying for another man's lifestyle while telling me it was for family emergencies. "There's more," Roberto said. "She's been planning this for months, maybe longer." I found emails between them going back almost a year. He showed me printed screenshots, love letters written in Portuguese, translated into English. Plans for their future together, discussions about getting married once her divorce was finalized, and calculations, detailed calculations about how much money she expected to get from our divorce settlement. She'd been spending my money to plan my replacement. The emails Roberto uncovered revealed the full scope of Isabella's plan. She hadn't just met this guy and fallen in love. She'd been methodically preparing to leave me for over a year. The worst email was dated 3 months after her first trip to Sao Paulo this year. In it, she detailed our entire financial situation to her boyfriend. My salary, our savings, the value of our house, even my retirement account balance. "He wants to know if you're worth the effort," Roberto translated from the Portuguese. She told him, "You are." Said, "You're dull but profitable." Dull but profitable. 14 years of marriage reduced to a cost-benefit analysis. But the deeper I dug, the more I realized Isabella had underestimated me. While she was planning her exit strategy, she'd made several critical mistakes. First, she'd continued using our joint credit card for her romantic expenses. Every dinner, every hotel room, every gift she'd bought for her boyfriend was documented on statements I could access. My lawyer estimated she'd spent over $22,000 of marital funds on adultery. Second, she'd been sloppy about the money transfers. When you wire money internationally, banks require detailed paperwork about the purpose and recipient. Isabella had lied on every form, claiming the money was for family medical expenses when it was actually going to support her boyfriend. Third, and most importantly, she'd abandoned our house to move in with another man while we were still legally married in Florida. That constituted desertion and adultery, which could impact how assets were divided in a divorce. Maria was practically gleeful when I brought her the evidence. "This is a lawyer's dream," she said, reviewing the documentation. "Financial misconduct, abandonment, adultery, and fraud. She's violated every aspect of her marital obligations while trying to claim half your assets." "What does that mean for the divorce?" I asked. "It means she's not getting half of anything. In fact, she might end up owing you money." That's when Maria explained Florida's laws about financial misconduct during marriage. If one spouse uses marital funds for an extramarital affair, the other spouse can claim reimbursement for those expenses, plus interest, plus damages. "We're talking about potentially $45,000 to $55,000 she'd have to pay back to you," Maria said, assuming she has it. Roberto's investigation had already answered that question. Isabella's boyfriend had no assets. She'd blown through most of her own savings supporting him. The only money she had access to was what remained in our joint accounts, which thanks to my proactive transfers, wasn't much. "There's one more thing," Roberto said during our next meeting. "She's been telling people in Brazil that you're abusive, that she had to escape to protect herself." He showed me social media posts in Portuguese where Isabella painted herself as a victim fleeing a controlling husband. Her family and friends were rallying around her, offering emotional and financial support for her brave escape. "She's building a narrative," Roberto explained, making herself the victim so people don't question why she left her marriage for a kid with no job. I stared at the translated posts. According to Isabella, I was controlling, emotionally distant, and financially abusive. The complete opposite of reality. "Can we use this?" I asked. Maria nodded. Defamation during divorce proceedings can impact settlement negotiations, especially when we can prove the claims are false. I had bank records showing I'd given Isabella complete access to our finances, phone records showing I'd rarely even called her when she was in Brazil, social media evidence of her posting happy photos from our marriage right up until she met her boyfriend. The truth was documented. Her lies were about to catch up with her. With all the evidence gathered, Maria and I developed what she called the nuclear option. Instead of waiting for Isabella to file for divorce in Brazil, where laws might be more favorable to her, we would file first in Florida and catch her completely off guard. "International divorces are complicated," Maria explained. "Whoever files first generally controls the jurisdiction. If she files in Brazil, she might be able to claim different asset divisions or support requirements. But if we file here first, everything gets decided under Florida law." The plan was elegant in its simplicity. We would file for divorce, citing abandonment and adultery, immediately freeze all joint accounts, file for exclusive use of the marital home, and demand reimbursement for all misappropriated funds. "She'll never see it coming," Maria said. According to her social media posts, she thinks she's in control of this situation. 3 days before we filed, I took one final step. I changed all the passwords on our joint accounts and set up alerts for any attempted access. If Isabella tried to withdraw more money, I'd know immediately. Then I waited. The process server found Isabella at her boyfriend's apartment in São Paulo on a Thursday morning. Roberto had provided the exact address. According to his report, she answered the door in a bathrobe, clearly not expecting legal documents from Florida. Maria called me an hour later. "She's been served. The clock is ticking." Under Florida law, Isabella had 20 days to respond to the divorce filing. During that time, she was prohibited from accessing any marital assets or making major financial decisions without court approval. I spent those 20 days moving my remaining personal belongings out of our house and into a rental apartment near my office. It wasn't much, but it was mine. No shared spaces, no reminders of broken promises. On day 19, my phone started ringing. "David, what are you doing?" Isabella's voice was different than I remembered. Higher pitched, panicked. "Getting divorced," I said calmly. "Like you wanted. This isn't what I meant. You can't just take everything. I have rights." "You had rights. You gave them up when you moved another man into our house. That's not permanent. He's just visiting. I laughed. I actually laughed. Isabella, I have bank records of you paying his rent for 6 months. I have emails where you plan your future together. I have photos of you two playing house in my home. Nothing about this is temporary. The line went quiet for a long moment. We can work this out, she said finally. We don't need lawyers. We can divide things fairly. We already are. My lawyer says you owe me $49,000 for misappropriated marital funds, plus the cost of this divorce, plus potential damages for defamation. I don't have that kind of money. I know. That's why we're seizing what's left in our joint accounts to cover what you can pay. The rest will come out of your share of any assets. You can't do this. I'm not doing anything. You did this. I'm just cleaning up the mess. She hung up. 2 days later, Maria received a call from a lawyer in Sao Paulo representing Isabella. They wanted to negotiate a settlement. What do you want to do? Maria asked. I thought about it for exactly 10 seconds. Tell them no. She made her choice. Now she lives with the consequences. You realize this means going to trial? It could get expensive. Some things are worth the cost. The trial was scheduled for 3 months later. Isabella would have to return to Florida to defend herself against charges of financial misconduct and abandonment. She'd wanted a divorce. She was going to get one she'd never forget. The courtroom in downtown Miami was smaller than I'd expected. Judge Margaret Foster had been presiding over family law cases for 18 years, and according to Maria, she had no patience for financial misconduct during divorce proceedings. Isabella walked in wearing a navy dress and dark sunglasses, flanked by 2 lawyers she'd somehow managed to afford. She avoided eye contact with me completely. Her boyfriend hadn't made the trip. Your Honor, Isabella's lead attorney began. My client was driven to seek companionship elsewhere due to an emotionally unavailable marriage. She simply fell in love. Judge Foster looked unimpressed. Ms. Rodriguez, please present your evidence. Maria stood up with a thick folder of documents, bank statements, credit card bills, wire transfer records, email printouts, social media screenshots, 3 months of investigation condensed into undeniable proof. Your Honor, the defendant systematically drained marital assets to fund an extramarital affair while planning to claim half of the plaintiff's property in divorce proceedings. She lied to financial institutions about the purpose of international transfers. She abandoned the marital home to cohabitate with another man. And she defamed the plaintiff on social media to justify her actions. The evidence was presented piece by piece. Every dinner charged to our credit card. Every wire transfer disguised as a family emergency. Every email planning her future with money she intended to steal from me. Isabella's lawyers tried to argue emotional abandonment. They claimed I'd worked too much, neglected her needs, failed to appreciate her culture. Judge Foster cut them off. Counselor, your client used marital funds to support another man for 6 months. She lied on federal banking forms. She abandoned her home to live with her lover. The court is not interested in marriage counseling theories. The verdict was swift and brutal. Isabella would receive nothing from our divorce. No house, no savings, no retirement benefits, no alimony. Instead, she owed me $56,000 in reimbursement for misappropriated funds. The joint accounts were already frozen, so she had no access to cash. Her share of our remaining assets barely covered half of what she owed. As the judge read the final decree, I watched Isabella's face crumble. The confident woman who'd sent me divorce papers via WhatsApp was gone. In her place sat someone who just lost everything. Her lawyers huddled around her, whispering urgently about appeals and payment plans. I gathered my papers and walked out. 6 months later, I was in my new house in Aventura, about 25 minutes north of Miami. Smaller than the old place, but completely mine, no shared memories, no ghosts of broken promises. Maria had called the week before with an update on the financial settlement. Isabella had managed to pay back about half of what she owed by selling some jewelry and getting money from her family in Brazil. The rest would come in monthly payments over the next 3 years. She's working as a server in Sao Paulo, Maria told me. Her boyfriend left when the money dried up. I wasn't surprised. Men who let women pay their rent rarely stick around when the payments stop. My phone buzzed occasionally with messages from Isabella. Apologies, explanations, requests to work things out as friends. I deleted them all unread. The house in Pinecrest had sold within 2 months. With my name as the sole owner, I'd kept every penny of the proceeds. I used part of it as a down payment on the new place and invested the rest. Work was going well. My reputation as someone who solved problems had earned me a promotion to lead engineer. The irony wasn't lost on me. Fixing broken systems at work, fixing my broken life at home. I'd started dating again. Nothing serious yet, but it was nice to have dinner conversations that didn't revolve around family emergencies or money transfers. Sometimes I wondered if Isabella had learned anything from the experience. Probably not. Some people never realize that actions have consequences until it's too late to matter. I didn't waste much time thinking about it. I had better things to do with my life than look backward at someone who'd never really been there in the first place. Some mistakes teach you exactly who you can trust.